All right, welcome to our next lecture on the female reproductive system. If you haven't already printed off the female reproductive cycle chart, it looks like this. Please do so as you prepare, as you watch this video, or as you go through and you're studying on your own, whatever you're doing. Make sure that you have that with you because it will help you a whole lot. So we're just going to jump into female. As soon as I share my screen. There we go. All right, so I just took us back to the beginning of female with the oogenesis, and remember that that's going to begin in fetal development, and so those ova are going to be sitting together. Oh, I didn't tell you this story. So those ova will be sitting together for a number of years. I know I told you about women over the age of 35, how we are at risk pregnancies because we have a greater likelihood that non-disjunction is going to happen and that we'll end up with a baby with trisomy, or could end up with a baby with a trisomy. So I have some friends, and they were in their mid-20s, I would imagine. Let's see, how old was I? 28. Maybe they were 24, 23, 24, somewhere in there. They got pregnant. And so this was their first pregnancy. They were both young. And the first one, in ultrasound, they discovered that she had Down syndrome. So they had Macy, and then, they had Macy. And then they got pregnant year and a half later, or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember how old Macy was. And so then they had an ultrasound, just to see. I think they were a little more concerned that there might be some issues, but when they ended up having the ultrasound, then they found out that Maddie had Down syndrome as well. So they had 2 Down syndrome girls in their first 2 pregnancies. So they were doing genetic testing and everything all the time. And so we don't see that very often, but there was a little bit different type of Down syndrome. It's called mosaicism than the typical trisomy. And what was interesting, because the wife, the mother, she was like, oh my goodness, was the non-disjunction event because of me? And so they were Bob and Leslie, and so they had Leslie tested, or they tested the girls, and they found out that one of the mosaicisms happened because of Leslie, and then the other mosaicism happened because of Bob. And so I thought that was really nice that neither one could feel like, oh, what, could I have done something different, whatever. No, those girls were supposed to be to that family and have Down syndrome. And they had 2 more girls after that had no genetic defects in them or abnormalities, and just a neat family. But those girls were really, really cute. So, okay. So anyway, there's that. All right. So here's where I want to start. Again, to review, is the follicular phase. So if you have, the ovarian cycle, if you have, I gotta hurry and text. So while I'm texting, so ovarian cycle, if you look at your chart, we're going to pull out our chart right now. Okay. So we're going to look at the ovarian cycle. So I'm going to unshare for a minute. All right. So when we look on our chart, we're going to be in this middle cycle. This middle row. And I'm going to read through what's happening as we go through the events of the ovarian cycle, since that's what's right here. So so follow along if you have your chart. All right. So In the ovarian cycle, the follicular phase, you'll notice on the chart, doesn't start on day 1. So what does that mean? Well, that means nothing is happening in the follicle on day 1. Now, can anybody tell me why nothing is happening in the follicle on day 1? I mean, we'll eventually get there, but why do I have no events in the ovarian cycle on day 1? Any ideas? If we look at what's on the screen right here, it says primordial follicles activated. Activated by what?
Telling it to do anything yet.
What?
The egg.
Okay, so the follicle. Because why?
Because nothing's been released yet.
Well, that's true, but there's something else that's not happening as well. That's what I'm after. So this first bullet point says primordial follicles activated. What activates the follicles? How about what stimulates the follicles? Does that help?
FSH.
Yeah, FSH. Is FSH constantly being secreted?
No.
No. Is there something that needs to secrete it? Do we remember what that is? What stimulates FSH and LH released from the anterior pituitary? Let's go to this picture. Yeah, GnRH. Okay, and what has just been happening to GnRH prior to day 1? What's this pink dotted line?
It's being inhibited.
Yeah, so GnRH release has been inhibited because we thought somebody was going to move in. Well, lo and behold, nobody moved in. So on day 1, we started demolition. And so now, is there anything inhibiting this GnRH?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So is that going to be an instantaneous release of FSH?
No.
No. So we go day 1, we go up here to GnRH, and we release that, and then we release
FSH and LH.
good FSH and LH. And so here, so this is day 1 right here, this little non-growing follicle. This one is now being acted upon. So that's why there's nothing happening in the ovarian cycle in day 1, because there's no hormonal stimulus coming from either the hypothalamus or the anterior pituitary at that point. Okay, so does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, so let's stay on this picture because it's a good summary as we read through the rest of the ovarian cycle on your chart. So day 2 to 4 says primary follicle stimulated, theca folliculi begins to form. Okay, so here is the FSH and LH acting on it. So for these first few days, and if we go back to this picture right here, here we can see, oh yeah, these little black circles, dots right here on the outside, that's the theca folliculi. So here would be day 1, nothing going on with this follicle. And here would be day 2, 3, 4, even though it says 2, 3, 4, it's not days. That's not what those numbers mean. And so that's what's going on, okay, from days 2 through 4. So if we go back now to this page, so this would be day 2 through 4 right here in this little follicle right here. Day 5 says theca folliculi begins to produce estrogen. So, oh yeah, look at right there. So now the amount of estrogen that's being formed by the thecal cells around the follicle is creating this inhibition of release of FSH and LH. And then follicles continue to develop into secondary follicles. Okay, so we got that. Well, actually, this is the secondary follicle, but they don't have all the steps in this picture. And so then by day 13, that's right here, the vesicular follicle develops. So remember, a vesicle is a fluid-filled bubble thing, like a cyst. Vesicle, they're very similar terms. And so here I have that fluid-filled cavity, and then I have my my oocyte and my secondary oocyte, and then, well, it's about to become a secondary oocyte, and then the granulosum cells around the follicle. Okay, so day 14. So now we'll come back to the hormonal stuff, and then we're going to go up here to that that positive feedback to allow the surge, but we'll get into that. But now we're going to get that surge. So boom, day 14, now we ovulate. Okay, so out comes that secondary oocyte. So now this is the rest of the follicular phase, or the rest of the ovarian cycle. So then we have ovulated follicle becomes corpus luteum, which secretes progesterone and estrogen. Oh, look right there. So that was on day 15. Day 16 through 25, corpus luteum continues to produce ovarian hormones. And then right around day 26, day 27, corpus luteum begins to degenerate into the corpus albicans due to the lack of LH. And then by day 28 into day 1, we have the corpus albicans. So if we go, oops, if we go back to this picture right here, so here's 15 through 26, 27. Oh, no, that's not the one I want. This is the one I want. So here, so this is day 14, 15 all through to 27-ish, 28, and then 28 to day 1 would be our follicle, or our corpus albicans present. Okay, does anybody, oh, let's make little notes. Okay, does anybody have any questions on this? This row. Okay, we need to put some periods in here, phases in here, because I didn't phase it out. So actually, let me pull up mine and show you what I'm doing. Okay. All right. So, all right. So here's what I want you to do. Let's get a purple. All right. So from here to here is the follicular phase, since they're divided into sections. So that's so bad. Follicular phase. Follicular to L phase. Oh, heck. Hang on, you guys. Okay. So from here to there, I'm going to do this better. Okay, there you go. How about that? Okay, so then what is, let's give it a different color. Oops. Okay, so this is, oops. Okay, this is just one day, and that's going to be ovulation. Okay, and then this last one right here is called the luteal phase. All right, so does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, all right, let's go ahead and move on then. To oops. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right, so now I was just seeing what was next. Okay, now we're going to go down to the bottom row to the hormonal cycle, even though it's not really a cycle. I mean, it is because they are secreted cyclically. Okay, so so this is going to actually start on a day. So we've got stuff going on in every single day. Okay, so on day 1, when we're starting our period, right here, GnRH from the hypothalamus stimulates FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. And then if we go to day 2, then FSH and LH on your chart says FSH and LH travel to the ovary to stimulate follicle development. So right here, follicle growth in thecal cells. As follicle grows, estrogen secretion begins from the thecal cells. Androgens are released to be converted to estrogen, and they're actually they can come from 2 places. They can come from the adrenal cortex. They can also come from the granulosa cells. Then from day 5 now, we have negative feedback of estrogen on FSH and LH release occurs. Positive feedback on estrogen production, so we just keep producing more and more estrogen, and then inhibin also inhibits the release of FSH. So on our chart, it says day 5, estrogen inhibits the release of FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. And then day 6 through 12, inhibition of estrogen continues on the anterior pituitary. Estrogen stimulates proliferation of the functionalis layer of the endometrium. And we're going to talk about that when we get into the uterine cycle. Okay, so then on day 12, or day 13, 12 or 13, high estrogen levels exert positive feedback on the anterior pituitary. Day 13, about 24 hours prior to ovulation, an LH surge occurs, and to a lesser extent, FSH. So high levels of estrogen exert positive feedback on the anterior pituitary, and LH and FSH surge. And then on day 14, of course, we have ovulation, but what's happening hormonally? So now we're going to go to day 15. Well, let's stay on day 14. So day 14, LH surge stimulates primary oocyte of the dominant follicle to complete meiosis 1. Secondary oocyte continues on to metaphase 2. LH also triggers ovulation about day 14, and estrogen levels decline. And we're going to look at a graph of that in just a minute. And then if we go back to the paper that I posted, it says on day 14, anterior pituitary levels still high, and then day 15, progesterone and estrogen exert negative feedback on the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary. FSH and LH levels decline after an initial drop. So number 7, we have corpus luteum forms. And then number 8, increasing progesterone and estrogen from the corpus luteum now have an inhibitory effect, again, on FSH and LH. And we're going to keep that negative feedback mechanism on them all the way through to the end of the cycle. And so a decrease in LH causes corpus luteum to degenerate, and by day 28, decreasing ovarian hormone ends the blockade of FSH and LH, and the new cycle begins. So we go back to our chart, day 16 through 25, negative feedback of ovarian hormones continues on hypothalamus and anterior pituitary. Around day 26, 27, progesterone and estrogen no longer produced by corpus luteum due to lack of influence of FSH and LH. And then day 28, GnRH, or day 28 to day 1, GnRH, once again, released from the hypothalamus due to low levels of estrogen and progesterone. Okay, and the cycle just repeats itself. So there's only a few days that I'm picky on. Okay, that you really need to know what's happening. Day 1, obviously, I need you to know everything that's happening on day 1. So if we look at our chart, you can look down through the columns, and you can see, oh, okay, this is happening in uterine cycle, this is happening in ovarian cycle, and hormonally. So day 1, day 13. So we want, we're getting ready for ovulation. Day 14, obviously is ovulation day. And then day 28, 27, 28, we're now down to low levels of estrogen and progesterone. Hi.
Hi. Are you going to be in your lab anytime?
No, no.
Okay.
No.
We're wanting to strip and wax it, so it's going to be quite a lengthy thing.
Okay, hang on. I'm recording. Can you come back and talk to me in a few minutes?
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay. Now I don't know what I was talking about. Okay, so then right at the end of the cycle, and basically you can just go end of the cycle. Okay, so does anybody have any questions on hormone stuff? Okay, well, then we're gonna go on to the uterine cycle and see if we can wrap all of this up today. All right, so I'm so excited to show you this next thing. All right, so we're gonna go into the top row, uterine cycle. So obviously this is, hey, we see, here's what's, this is the only thing that the only event that we can see in our all 3 cycles intermeshed together. We only can see what's going on in the uterine cycle. And even then, we can only see what's going on for a few days, for like a week, and then we don't know what's going on after that. So day 1 through 5 is known as the menstrual phase. And so we'll draw that out too as we go back to the chart. So day 1 through 5, menstrual phase. Uterus sheds all but the basalis layer. FSH and LH are beginning to rise, okay, because we're in days 1 through 5. So, you know, FSH and LH are going to start being secreted between day 1 and day 2. And then ovarian hormone levels are at their lowest because day 5 is when we start producing estrogen. So we don't have anything being made right now. Bleeding for 3 to 5 days due to the breakup of spiral arteries. I'll show you what that looks like when we get more into the proliferative and secretory phases. By day 5, the growing ovarian follicles are starting to produce enough estrogen for endometrial proliferation. So what's happening essentially in the uterus in day 1 through 5 is demolition. So nobody moved into the room. So we're going to just gut the room. We're going to tear down essentially we're going to tear down the drywall, strip it all the way down to the 2x4s and rebuild it again. And by day 5, we are starting, demolition crew is gone, and now the restoration crew is going, or the renovation crew is going to start coming in, and they're going to start putting the drywall back up again. All right, so I found this a number of years ago, and I'm so glad that it popped up in my memories on Facebook because I couldn't find it just on the Awkward Yeti, but so it's so perfect. So there is a legend from the days of yore when speaks of a beast in a cave. 'Twas silent and peaceful until the clocks strike upon the 3rd week. Upon time it would stir. The beast was ferocious, rumbling deep, spewing forth in its disappointment, for it required a baby and had none. 'Twould pit hard against brains, stopping at nothing to spread the chaos the beast felt deep within. Eventually it would accept a sacrifice of wine and ice cream. After 1 week, the beast would retreat, awaiting a child once more. And so Heart says, is the uterus real, Brain? And Brain says, oh, come on, does it sound real? So there it is. That's our life from month to month. So I absolutely love that. No, it's not. So Tony said, I thought the menstrual phase always followed ovulation, day 14. No, nope. Because if the menstrual phase followed day 14, you kicked out the baby before it even had a chance to move in. So no, we have to give that baby 14 days in order to develop to a blastocyst stage, because that's going to take 7. And then we give it another 7 days so that it can implant and, you know, make the room its own and let the mom know, oh yeah. So no, it does not. because that would be pointless. If menstruation followed ovulation, you would never ever get a chance for implantation to occur. All right, so there's that. Thank you for your question. All right, now I just love this so much because it's so true. All right, so now let's renovate the room, friends. Okay, so now we are into the proliferative phase. So I have on the chart, I have day 5, day 6, whatever, you know, we're just mincing words here, but we're going to start now as estrogen, because the point is, if you look on the chart, it says estrogen stimulates regrowth of functionalis layer. So here we are in day 16 or day 6, sorry, proliferative phase. Endometrium rebuilds itself by the basalis layer, generating a new functionalis layer due to the presence of estrogen. So that's estrogen's job, is to cause the proliferation of that basalis into a brand new functionalis layer. So coming up through the basalis layer will be glands, uterine glands that are going to produce the nutrients for the blastocyst that before a placenta develops, so that it can get nourishment from being embedded in that endometrium. Spiral arteries increase in number. The spiral arteries are eventually going to be the maternal side of the placenta that is going to bring the blood to the placenta and pick up the waste products and deliver the nutrients. Estrogen also induces synthesis of progesterone receptors. In just a minute, we'll talk about what is the function of progesterone. Okay, so we are on day 5 through 14, okay, or day 6 through 14. So we're growing the thickness of that endometrium. And then we have ovulation. So ovulation's not going to be a separate event in the uterine cycle. It's just going to be the last day of the proliferative phase. Okay, so now we need to go into what's known as the secretory phase on day 15. So in the secretory phase, the endometrium is preparing for implantation. So I built the walls back, even though I just gutted the room. I've put the walls back, I've put up the sheetrock, I've taped it, I've coated it, and now I'm painting. Okay, so I'm painting, I'm putting pictures on the walls, I'm making it pretty and inviting, and I'm putting some snacks in the room, and I'm just getting, you know, everything like an intercom system, just everything so that the baby will want to implant in there and then hang out there for the next 9 months. So how do we make sure that we don't lose that endometrial lining? Is that we secrete progesterone. So the job of progesterone is to maintain the uterine lining through this secretory phase. Let's see. So, and where is this progesterone coming from? Well, it's coming from the ovulated follicle, corpus luteum. So now that there's not an ovum in there, now it's going to secrete progesterone that will go to the uterus and make sure that that functionalis layer isn't lost. So here's a deal with many miscarriages. You know, obviously a miscarriage is nature's way of getting rid of a baby that's probably would not ever be able to live outside of the womb. There's something wrong, or there's something wrong with the mom, and we need to be able to fix it and find out, you know, because, you know, sometimes there are problems with us. It's not just the baby, there are problems with us. So here's my situation with my pregnancies. So my first 2 miscarriages my first 2 pregnancies ended in miscarriage. The first one was definitely, I had an embryo. She was about to go into the fetal stage. So I lost her at 12 weeks, and the doctor said it didn't look like she developed beyond 8, but I think she was a little bit further along than that. But anyway, so I lost that pregnancy. Then I got pregnant, let's see, October to February. So I got pregnant, or January, somewhere in there, January, February after that. And was just barely 8 weeks. And then I lost that one. But that was the one when I went in and had my DNC that they said that they didn't see any products of conception. And so that was, I had told you about the hydatidiform mole, and I'll show you, I'll probably on Wednesday, I'll talk, when we get to embryology, then I'll talk about what is a hydatidiform mole. And then I probably had one of those that was secreting a lot of HCG. So it was like I was pregnant. My body thought I was pregnant, but I really wasn't, because there really wasn't an embryo that developed. So I lost that one. And then I got pregnant with my son, with my oldest. And when I went, my doctor told me, he said, when you come in, or no, he says, when you are late on your period and you think that there's a possibility for you to be pregnant, he says, you come in right away. He says, we're not going to delay. And so I was late with Cameron. And so I was like, yeah, there's a possibility that I could be pregnant. And I took a pregnancy test and it came up positive. And so I went into the doctor, and he says, so we're going to put you on progesterone suppositories. So we're going to make sure that your body has adequate amounts of progesterone to make sure that you stay pregnant, that you don't lose this pregnancy. So I stayed on the progesterone until I was 5.5 months pregnant with Cameron. And then I delivered him full term. And then I got pregnant with Missy and still had the same doctor. And so he says, yeah, we're still doing that same protocol. So although it took 3 weeks from the time that I was late to the time that she actually produced enough HCG for us to detect it in a pregnancy test, I took 3 pregnancy tests that all came up negative, but I knew I was pregnant. And sure enough, I was. So sometimes you just don't make enough HCG it's enough for your body to stay pregnant, but not enough to come out in your urine so when I went in and they did a blood test and it came back positive. So I had Missy, went on the same progesterone suppositories, and then I came here and got pregnant with Amy and told my doctor, I said, so I'm pregnant and this is what we've done in the past. And he goes, oh, absolutely. He says, we're not going to deviate from anything that you've done with your other pregnancies, considering that you had miscarriages. And so we did the same thing, carried Amy to full term, and everything was good. So with me, it looked like maybe I wasn't producing enough progesterone, but that's one of their first course, if you're having multiple miscarriages, is to go that route and check to see, let's make sure that you have enough progesterone so that your uterus doesn't I don't want to say disintegrate, but detach from the wall, from the basal layer, and not be able to maintain the pregnancy. Okay. So I got off on a tangent. I was going to tell you that story anyway, but I don't think I was going to do it there. But anyway. All right. So progesterone from the corpus luteum causes spiral arteries to elaborate and coil. We'll look at that in just a second. Uterine glands secrete glycoproteins to sustain the embryo until implantation and beyond that, because you don't have a placenta yet either. Increasing progesterone causes the formation of a cervical plug. Now, LH has been inhibited because during this day 15, this luteal phase, it's going to be secreting progesterone and estrogen, which is going to inhibit LH. So since LH is inhibited, the corpus luteum is going to start degenerating. And let me look. Okay, so Erin says, is the progesterone what makes you sick during pregnancy? We're not sure. We don't really know what causes morning sickness, but for me, that extra dose of progesterone made me sick as a dog, and I threw up all the time, and I lost about 10 pounds at the beginning of each pregnancy because I was just sick. And there may be other things, but that's, for me, that's the number one thing, because it happened every single time. And with my first pregnancy that I lost, I was sick, and then I started to feel better, and I was going into the hear the heartbeat, so the week 12 checkup, and I felt good. I felt really good. I didn't feel nauseous. And so I went to my friend and I said, I'm feeling good today. This is kind of weird. And she goes, oh no, everything will be fine. And then I went in and she had died. And so we couldn't get a heartbeat. And so that was for me, it was like, I want to be sick. And so I was really glad, even though with Amy, I was the sickest I ever was. And so I would take a half a Phenergan at 4:30 because it made me sleepy. And so I would come to work and then here at EA, and then I would come home 4:30. I'd take a half a Phenergan and go to bed for the rest of the day, and then get up in the morning and come and teach all day, and then come home at 4:30 and take a Phenergan and go to bed. And so that was my routine until I went off the suppositories, and then I guess I didn't have enough progesterone to make me sick anymore. But that's my experience with progesterone in the beginning of pregnancies. Okay, here's a very interesting thing. In the second bullet point, it says fat deposits help convert adrenal androgens to estrogens. So it's important that you have some body fat. It's not good, ladies, if you just are like, I want to have like 2% body fat, unless there's something that necessitates you doing that, like you are an Olympic athlete or whatever, and you take your body down to that low of a body percent. I mean, even, I would say 10% body fat in a female would be bad. You may have difficulty getting pregnant. Now, if you're already an individual that has low body fat, well, your body's pretty attuned to that, I would think, that you wouldn't have those issues. But if you were someone that, by whatever means you went down to low body fat percentage, there may be some issues in your reproductive success because you do not have those fat deposits there to help get the extra estrogen that you need. And so if there's no continued progesterone production because there's no more LH, so there's no more stimulus of the corpus luteum, then the endometrium lining will slough off. And that's when we get our period. All right, so let's take a look at this picture right here. So this shows, here's the basalis layer, this little darker layer down here at the bottom. And then up here is the functionalis layer. And so this is the part that shed. So all of this lighter area, but you can see, oh my goodness, look at all these glands in here, and these blood vessels that are all coily like this. So what are they? So here are the spiral arteries and veins. Okay, so the let's see, endometrial vein. Okay, but so here's the arteries, here's the vein. These will become the maternal side of the placenta. Here are those uterine glands, and they're secreting their product out into the lumen of into the uterine cavity so that little blastocyst can have some nutrients too. So what's going to happen when you have your period? So really what you're shedding during a period is this epithelium, okay, of the functionalis layer. But what right now, okay, so let's say that you're in the proliferative phase, and these blood vessels are being supported by the uterine artery, okay? And so there's blood coming out into here. Why don't we hemorrhage when we have our period? I mean, yeah, we bleed, but why do we not hemorrhage? That's because this is just like leaves when they fall off the trees in the fall. The petiole, or the stem of the leaf as it attaches into the branch, will produce what's known as an abscission layer, and that will essentially close off right here. So it'll just create a plug at the end of the artery so that it doesn't keep bleeding out into here as this is lost. Now, you can get some issues where blood still comes out, and then it depends on how thick is your functionalis. So many factors between length and amount of menses and all that kind of stuff from woman to woman. But that's why we don't hemorrhage is because these spiral arteries close off, and then we just shed the epithelium, but you just shed all the blood that was left, you know, so it's like all the sap in the leaf is going to be lost. And so that's why it looks like blood, because if it was endothelium or, and you know, epithelium, it would just be clear fluid. You know, we wouldn't really see that there was anything. We just see the blood that's left in these spiral arteries and veins when
You
the
said that
functionality
this
stops.
is the part that turns into like the placenta and everything. So my sister had problems with her blood actually clotting, and that's why she would
Yeah.
lose the baby.
Mhm.
So is that what it's doing there? Is it's trying to clot that off so you don't
Ye-
hemorrhage?
No, she just has a weird clot.
Okay.
So, because this is during her pregnancy, right? While the placenta's forming, right? She gets
Yep.
clots.
Like the first, she would lose them before.
Right. Yeah, no, just whatever is causing clots to happen. Not that they're trying to plug off, because
Uh-huh.
that's a little bit different. These are just actual clots that are happening because of her body's tendency to clot.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's why it's scary. Because then if you have clotting, then you can have blood pressure problems that can lead to preeclampsia and eclampsia and other, besides miscarriages and things that may affect the mother's health. And so, yeah.
Yeah, she had to get on blood thinners up
Right.
into a certain point, and then they pulled her from those blood thinners, obviously, because they didn't want her to hemorrhage when she delivered.
Right.
Um,
Yep.
and then I lost my first at 20 weeks, but they
Oh.
never figured out what the result was.
Yeah.
So when I went in to get my testing to see if it was boy or girl, there was no heartbeat, and they said that my baby had died at 18.
Oh, yeah.
But they had, anyways, they had no reason for it. They couldn't
Yeah.
figure it
And
out.
neither with mine.
Yeah.
So, it just happens sometimes. And sometimes we just go, it just happened. And we don't
Yep.
look for a cause. We just
Yeah.
say, try again. So,
Yep.
okay. Let's see. So Tony said, so in a pregnancy complication, blood can be light or dark. Is that based on arteries and veins rupturing in the epithelium? I don't think so. I don't know that would be the main reason why some of it was light or some of it would be dark. I think I don't know. You know, reproductive physiology is probably the most difficult specialty of them all, because we really don't understand what's going on most of the time, and we're just kind of playing it by ear. And so it could be, but I don't really know, Tony, if it is an arterial bleed or if it's a venous bleed. There could be a lot of factors. It could be other things that are contributing to the color of the blood besides just the blood itself. So I don't really have a good answer for that. I don't even have a bluff answer for that. I just have, I don't know. All right, any other questions? Let's see. Oh, we're almost out of time, but we're almost where I want to be anyway. Okay, so all right, so let's look at our chart and then just read through these. Oh, I know, let's do this. Oh, are you serious? I got rid of it. Oh, I'm stupid. I X'd out the wrong thing. Okay, that. Oh yeah, because I want this chart anyway. So stop sharing and share this instead. Okay, so what we're going to do then is draw in these phases, and we'll make them line up with, well, sort of. They won't totally line up though. Okay, so here, because we only have 2 phases in the uterine cycle. So that one is the proliferative phase. Oh no, there's 3. I did that wrong. forget that. Let me redo that. Silly me. Okay, there's 3 because we got the menses and the menstrual phase. So right here to here, wherever your period ends. Okay, so it's going to vary from woman to woman. So this is the menstrual phase. Oh, I always do that. Okay, so there's the menstrual phase. Then we have the proliferative phase from here to here. We'll take that up there and we'll put proliferative phase. And then we're gonna go here. Oops. Oh, dang it. And then from here to here is the secretory phase. Okay, and there are the phases of the uterine cycle. So menstrual phase, proliferative phase, secretory phase. Okay, so now flip your chart over, your table over to the chart. And let's look at that because I love it. So what's funny, let me grab it and show you. So I took an endocrinology class when I was in grad school. And oh my gosh, such my favorite class, that invertebrate paleontology. And so I'm going to stop sharing. Let's see, maybe I can do it with my dot cam. I don't know where my cord is. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I had this test. Okay, so here was my test, and it said, draw a graph of plasma concentrations of progesterone, estradiol, LH, and FSH during a normal 28-day ovarian cycle for a 21-year-old woman. On the graph, briefly indicate the causes and effect of each increase or decrease in hormone concentration. Also indicate the time of ovulation with respect to hormone changes in the time of beginning of menstruation. So here was progesterone, so I had to graph that. Then here was estradiol or estrogen. That's actually the active form of estrogen. So I had to draw that. And then I had to do LH and what was going on there. And then here's the FSH and what was going on there. And then I had to put all the dates down here, the time frames down here, and all the phases and everything. And I made a boo-boo because I put my LH surge on the same day as ovulation. So my LH surge, actually, the peak should have been right there. So I missed 2 points on that. No, I missed 1 point because I got some boo-boo on that too. So I'm going to show you, so you don't have to do this yourself. That's what's on the next graph. But here's my other question I wanted to show you that I had to do. So here is, you have to take cholesterol, and then, so you guys that are in OChem, you probably can do all of this. But then I had to go all the way here to estradiol, and I had to do the intermediate, or the enzymes and the intermediate steps, and then where it happened, placenta or the fetal adrenal or wherever, and then finally over to here. So let me tell you about this question. So I was up by this professor's office the semester before I took the class, and he had the test posted from that semester, and it had a question like this, and I was like, I bet I better know that when I take the class. And you know, this was back in the day when I couldn't just take a picture of it with my phone and memorize it. So I had to make sure, I had to look up all of these structures as he was talking about them in class and everything. And so then when it came down to the test, I had these, oh my gosh, you guys, I could draw those babies like nobody's business. And I got 14 out of 15 on that one, because this actually happens in the fetal adrenal and not the fetal liver, but I know that now. But anyway, so sometimes it pays to look at what your professor posts outside the classroom. So anyway, that made it so that I passed this test. I got a 95 on it, so I was pretty proud of that. I worked my butt off in that class, friends. Okay. Yes, so look at Ray's question. Is the uterus a high-risk area for cancer since the walls are constantly being built up, torn down? Absolutely. Uterine cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer. Those are the ones that kill women if they're in breast cancer. And they're all tied together. They're all reproductive stuff because we have so much stuff going on. Cervical cancer, why do we get cervical cancer so much? Is because of the human papillomavirus. So sexually transmitted. So girls, if you haven't had your HPV vaccine yet, you may want to get that. Just, you know, it's just a good idea. And so it's recommended before a woman starts having intercourse. If she's already been having intercourse, it's probably pointless now, because if you're going to be exposed to the virus, you've probably already been exposed to it. And it's like cold sore, it's a herpes simplex virus. And so, well, it's not a herpes simplex, but it's like that. Hangs out in your body. And so then it will grow back and start producing cervical cancer. So we can, that's one of our vaccines against cancer is the HPV vaccine. So that's cervical cancer. And then, yeah, uterine cancer and ovarian cancer are ones that because they're so active through the woman's reproductive lifetime that we need to be having pap smears. We need to be checking, you know, to make sure that we aren't at risk for cancer, because always cancer, the earlier you find it and start fighting it, the better your chance of recovery. Okay, so, oh, freak. So here's my last thing. So we're going to go to the chart and just look at that really quick, how things all overlap. So you can be looking at that. I'll leave you with that for today. So you can be reviewing that. So when we come Wednesday, then we're all ready to talk about where things line up. So I'm not going to draw any lining up things right now. But there it is. So here are the gonadotropic hormones. So FSH and LH levels. Here's the ovarian cycle. So we put those together because these levels are triggering these events. And then here are the ovarian hormones. And so they are down here because they trigger these events. Okay, so their rises and falls correspond to what's going on down here. And then their rising and falling corresponds to what's happening in the ovary. So review that after you've taken your lab practical, and good luck on your lab practical, and make sure you get that done by the end of tomorrow. And then we'll just cruise on to the end. I'm going to be here tomorrow at 9 o'clock in lab time so that we can just finish this off and go on to embryo, because I want to start the embryo. I definitely want to do the embryo on Wednesday. So I'm actually going to start embryonic development tomorrow. So I'll be here at 9 o'clock. And so we'll do embryo. We'll finish this off and we'll do embryo on Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and we'll have a reproductive embryology test on Monday. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll take a look at getting prepared for the final, and then Thursday will be our final. I still don't know what we're doing exactly yet, but there's no outside proctoring or anything like that. Yes, you can. Okay, so does anybody have any other questions pertinent to just whatever we talked about today? Okay, if not, then we will end this recording.